I had a mystical experience where I was taken out of my body and brought into this void where I experienced the pre-birth deal that I made before I came here, which was to work for the divine. An angel had come and grabbed me from my body, brought me up through the atmosphere into heaven, into this dark void where I met God, who is now I can understand amorphous and all things, but told me that I had a deal before I was born. When I died, that cord was severed. I felt it, I saw it, it was gone. And I knew that I was separate from my body, and I was rushed up in this angelic being who was super intelligent, feeding me comfort and well-being. Thanks for having me here. I super appreciate it. I was a Catholic Christian kid, but what happened to me when I was 5 is I had a mystical experience where I was taken out of my body and brought into this void where I experienced the pre-birth deal that I made before I came here, which was to work for the divine. And then I came back, and so my life began to change when I was a child. I had always had this mystical leaning. I was a typical boy. I got in trouble plenty of times and harassed my sisters and was harassed back. Loved everybody. Got in trouble across the line a couple of times growing up that I shouldn't have crossed, but I was lucky to have people take care of me and not. I told my mom what happened. This is in a 5-year-old's brain. An angel had come and grabbed me from my body, brought me up through the atmosphere into heaven, into this dark void where I met God, who is now I can understand amorphous and all things, but told me that I had a deal before I was born. I could see the boy in the tree, and I could see myself in my light body, and I knew that the boy wasn't me and that I had this deal. And then I was sent back. I ran in the house and I told my mom I was going to be a priest. My mother assumed Rome, and she said that you're not going to have a wife to do your ironing for you if you're going to be a priest, assuming I was going to be Catholic. So you're going to have to learn to do things around the house, and you're going to have to dust the dining room for coming in uh, without permission. And that's the beginning of your training. So I learned from a young age not to talk about it. And it wasn't my only experience. It was my first one. I had a whole series of experiences culminating in this near death experience. I didn't understand any one of them really. I won't tell much of why I was where I was and what happened through the night. Suffice it to say that I was ice climbing in Alberta, Canada in March, and it was well below freezing, 10 feet of snow on the ground. I was an experienced winter mountaineer, never ice climbed, but I just spent 8 days snow caving in the wilderness in British Columbia and grew up in wilderness camping, skiing and National Ski Patrol. Winter was my thing, outdoors was my life. And so went on this ice climb, that 1% that I mentioned, I made an initial mistake in my gear, and my mistake cascaded into a catastrophe. We reached the top of the climb as the sun set and the temperature dropped to 30 degrees, about 500 or 600 feet up on a sheer face in desperate, dangerous, terrible, grave, life-threatening situation. We decided we were going to die there, or we were going to die trying to get off the mountain. We decided to try to get down in the dark. We fought our way down through the entire night. Sheer drop, cold got worse and worse, frostbite, hypothermia, fear, lots of fear, fear stuffed down, hyper focus on what we're doing, no room for mistakes. We made mistakes because the cold steals your reason and makes you stupid and make bad choices. And I made bad choices. Tim, my climbing partner, made bad choices. He was highly trained. He had his certification as a lead climber. And I'd done a lot of ropes and rock climbing. Ice was new for me, but heights and rocks and ropes weren't new for me. We got to the final rappel about 150 feet up. There was a ledge, iron pins with carabiners clipped into them, and we were clipped into our harnesses to the mountain. So we're not going to fall for the first time all night. It's way late into the night. I don't know what time. Hypothermia was extremely advanced in us. We were hardly even talking to each other. We didn't have any food. We had water because there was ice. We could suck on the ice or eat the snow, but we weren't even talking to each other because speaking expended too much energy. We could see our energy meters going down as the cold got closer and time ticked on to when we would die. I had the rope. I tied it to my harness. I took the other end of the rope and I tossed it around this corner of the mountain. We're on rock and not on ice at this point. I pulled on the rope and it stuck somewhere up above, jammed between some rock face. The more I pulled it, the tighter it set in. Now we can't go down and we can't go up. It's always coldest before the dawn. It keeps getting colder and hypothermia gets worse and worse and worse. I'll leave out what happened in between at this very end of it, but I eventually fell asleep and would wake up, stand up and pull on the rope. And then this time I stood up, the world changed. I had this big black circle around me, and this big black circle collapsed rapidly like a spotlight going out. And as it went out, I thought to myself, I must be falling asleep. But I didn't fall asleep. It closed off. Instead of falling asleep, I awoke. I awoke in a way that I had not been awake before because I was out of my body. My body was sort of behind me, but I was still attached to it. In front of me, where the mountain was supposed to be, I was a little confused. I wasn't scared at all. There was this deep velvet darkness that extended into the size of the universe. It was just humongous darkness. I was wondering what was going on, and way far in the distance, in the darkness, a pinprick like a star appeared. This star illuminated this darkness, and then it rushed toward me across this vast distance, faster than the speed of light to me. And it just came so rapidly. It was almost instantly next to me, in front of me, and it filled my vision with this white light, communicated to me telepathically, non-linguistically, no language, no concepts, no ideas, just information. And it told me, "You're coming with me. I'm taking you." And I thought to myself, don't know what's going on, not going anywhere, staying right here. And it just snatched me right out of my body like a big glove and pulled me inside itself and rocketed off. I was inside of this orb of light, this orb of consciousness. I had a shape, I had a human shape, but I wasn't made of molecules. I was made of light, like all these particles of light. Every single time when I was younger and had these other mystical experiences, I had what the Bible talks about, the silver cord. I had this silver cord connecting me to my body. When I died, that cord was severed. I felt it. I saw it. It was gone. And I knew that I was separate from my body and I was rushed up in this angelic being who was super intelligent, feeding me comfort and well-being, but also as big as it was compared to me, it was small compared to its source. The source itself was the same thing, like a quantum entanglement, but the source itself, I could tell that it was all there was. And it was communicating to me through this smaller entity, which is bigger than me. As we were traveling back up through this space, I had 2 points of view. I was inside of this angelic being made of light, could see into this darkness because it was transparent, couldn't move, but I didn't want to because I was super comfortable, feeding me well-being. I had this other point of view, like another eyeball in space that was seeing me inside of this angelic being, and I had the sense that it was my higher self seeing a lower self, like my God part of me seeing my soul part of me. And when I looked at it, and I could see this inside of my consciousness, but when I looked over to where this eye was, I couldn't see it, but I could see it seeing me looking for it. I'm catapulted up this escalator, this elevator, this rocket, and I get to the edge of where there's this transition. This transition opens into this much larger space. It opened up, and I found myself inside of this vast universe sized emptiness. And there was nothing there, and no molecules, no electromagnetic energy. Everything I'm talking about is metaphor, but there was a completely otherworldliness to it. And I was gigantic, like a huge inflated puffer fish. I was just got bigger and bigger, and I was made of consciousness, and my thinking was my being, was my feeling, was my self-understanding. No separation, no brain in the way of my self-understanding, no brain in the way of my thinking. And I knew myself as myself. I understood that this was my true self. I never had really been Peter. I had occupied that body, but this is who I'd always been. And as I'm in this contentment, I can see in every direction at once. I was this expanded consciousness and I could see in every direction at once, like I had 10,000 eyes. But and this infinite darkness was also strangely illuminated. And there was no particular light source in it, but I could see in the darkness, but I also didn't have any eyes. Way far in the furthest distance I could see was a greater darkness that I couldn't see into. I was in this vast, vast space, utterly alone, completely content, not afraid, and I could see that there was a containment I was in. And out of this containment, this very far distant blackness, this tearing open occurred, and it ripped open and light poured through. As I saw this light pouring through, which was so much bigger than me. Like I was gigantic and this thing was ginormous. I was like the moon and it was like the sun in size. And it was the most beautiful, most beauty I'd ever seen. I can't explain the depth of my attraction to it. So I wanted it in a way that I never wanted anything else. As soon as I wanted it, I was next to it and it was mutual. I wanted it and it came to me as I went to it. And so now I'm up against it. It's like this huge waterfall of light. It's pure white light. And it's so bright that if I were to see it with my human eyes, I'd be blinded. But there was no pain. It was just immensely bright white light. And it was also all of these individual fragments of light, a billion different colors, electromagnetic radiation, X-rays, infrareds, and so much more. And I could see them all. And they were all simultaneously, not going from like A to B. It was A and B at the same time. It was brilliant white light, one thing, and many all at once. And it had three layers to it. It was solid, translucent, and it was transparent all at the same time. I could see through it into the deeper darkness. I could see that the deeper darkness was on the other side of it and that it wanted me to come in and I wanted it. And I touched it with my being. As I touched it with my being, it tore me open. It absorbed me. So I became within it, but also simultaneously it entered into me. And then all these other things happened. I'm in this space and I have a life review. My life review begins by sort of have shrunk down again to this light body person. And there's a humongous eye looking at me, radiating light, illuminating my light body, making me exist, and knowing my entire human life recently ended, knowing everything. There was no part of me that was not seen. And it wasn't like, you're taught, or at least when I was a kid in Catholic church, that, St. Peter writes down everything you do. So you better be good. It wasn't like there was a scribe up there taking a pen to page. The divine being was me and existed in my life as me and experienced everything that I had experienced. That's how it knew me. It was omnipresent in me. I was okay. I mean, it's like 99.99% light, except for this one place of darkness where all of my guilt and shame had coalesced. It kind of clumped up together in one thing. And I tried to hide it because the light was so brilliant. I was awestruck. I was in wonderment. I was in ecstasy, but I was also like that I don't want it to see this part of me. So as soon as I tried to hide this part of me, I got sucked inside this part of me. And I went through this part of my life review where I became two people simultaneously. I was me, Peter, my human self, and then I was every single person in the sequence that I'd ever hurt in my life from inside of them. I was my sister, my brother, my mother, my father. I existed as them, experiencing each individual incident where Peter, human, from youngest life, caused them intentional pain, whatever those were, in comparison to the pain they felt. My emotions were this big and the pain they felt was 10,000 times bigger. And so as I went through this, I realized that all of the pain that I gave away actually was accruing to me in the sense of my own shame, not because I was being judged, but because I could see myself in comparison to perfection. I could see my imperfection in comparison to perfection. But this perfection all the way along was saying, I love you. I love you. I know all about you. I lived your life. I loved you through all these terrible, bad things. I loved you as I've always loved you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I then have this experience where I understand the brokenness of all humanity and my radical equality with what it is to be a human being, and the way we don't always treat the people that we want to treat the best that we should treat them. And that there's this vast similarity between what maybe the church would call sins, but they're all the same in comparison to perfection. And it's not like I was being blamed for this. The voice, because it was speaking to me, said to me, I made you this way. You didn't make yourself. I'm creator, you're creature. I put you into this matrix, into this code, and you had to follow the code. I love you as you are. I have always loved you as you are. And as my internal eye turned toward the love and away from myself, all of my karma, all of the things that I had done fell away from me. I could see them in a pile of bricks at the bottom of the building. Oh, there they are. They're still waiting down there for me when I get off, but they were gone, vaporized. They didn't exist for me. And I was inflated with love and beauty, joy, truth, hope, understanding, knowledge, awe, bliss, paradise. And I just got bigger and bigger and bigger and more and more and more. But I'll tell you this about it. I'll go back through it again in a heartbeat. The bliss and unity that I experienced, the welcome, the wholeness, the healing is incomprehensible here, unspeakable and incomprehensible. But it left this residual in me that drives me toward it every moment of my life. In my near-death experience, part I haven't talked about yet, I witnessed the outpouring from the greater darkness, the light outpouring from the greater darkness, creating our entire structure of our universe below the quantum level, the divine light weaving through all things. I saw light inside of every human heart, even though human beings couldn't see it. The totality of love was all of this universe and the heaven I was still in, and beyond the darkness itself that I couldn't see. This immensity of love, well, told me that it loves itself and nothing is lost. Every living being gets enfolded back into the divine love one way or another. Maybe it takes lifetimes, maybe it takes one lifetime. But what I do know is that nothing and no one is ever lost. And from that unconditional, infinite love that I experienced laser beamed directly at me, like all of the power of the sun through a single magnifying glass right into my heart. This expansiveness of love for me, that was the same love that it has for absolutely everyone. And I could see this golden fleck of light inside everyone. It wasn't like I was being told this. I saw it. I still see it. And so one person may have a hellish near death experience. One might have a near death experience where they judge themselves, and others don't. But in the end, nobody's excluded. Well, it was my friendly angel who had collected me a half a dozen times through my entire life. I knew this angelic being. It was not just seeing it, but being snatched by it. It's just that this particular time, it just took me. It would like showed up and took me. This time, it was different. I watched it come for me. I knew I was freezing to death. When I came back, the same angelic being brought me back. I chose to come back, and I chose a particular life to live, the one I'm living now. As I entered into my body, it like pierced my chest like an ice screw and pierced me with strong fingers, opened me and shoved my soul self inside. As I was inside of this confinement, this painful confinement, there was this slit open in my heart like an eye that I could see the shape of this. It seemed like the closer it got, the closer it took me to my corporeal form, the denser I became. I wasn't as dense as this clay mud person here, but I was denser than I was in heaven. The same thing seemed to have happened to this angelic being. And all the time I'd ever seen it, I'd never seen it as a shape. And it had a humanoid shape, and it was a luminous humanoid shape, and it had a person-y kind of thing to it. But who it was, I don't really know. It was God. All of this was aspects of the oneness of being. No matter where I was during this experience, the presence of the divine permeated everything as oneness. It's self-revealing. It's not like I had to, "Oh, your lady. Now I remember you. Oh, yeah, I saw you once before." It's not like that at all. It was the same with the divine. It's completely self-evident. It's like you look at a beautiful scene and you know that it's beautiful. You don't think about it. It's like with the same angelic being, I would say its energetic form just says who it is. It kind of announces itself. I was thinking of the trumpets blaring and the angels arriving, "Here they come, hark!" And it's kinda like they told me who it was, but without a name. So, when I was seeing all of humanity as like a lifetime shot, camera shot, I could see every single person. I saw my parents' faces arise from the earth, and I could see mom and dad A and mom and dad B. I saw the whole of their life without me. And the nuclear destruction of their emotional and psychological lives, having lost a second child. And my death would have shattered all of them. And then I saw mom and dad, and I saw their lives with me. There was a reduction of the pain. There wasn't an elimination of it. But the comparison was nuclear destruction versus walking through a field of brambles naked and not being able to stop. So you're getting cut everywhere, but it's not going to kill you. I saw that, and I was given a choice. Because I was in timelessness, if I just waited, they would both die and be with me. But I couldn't endure the suffering they were going to incur without me if I had a choice to go back. I said, "Do I have to stay here?" And the voice said, "No, you don't have to stay here. I want you to stay here, but you don't have to." I said, "If I go back, can I come back here?" And the voice says, "Yeah, you can come back here." I say, "Then I choose to live my life." And it says, "You won't live your life," and throws me out like a fastball. Whoosh. I'm flying down and I'm contained inside of the same angelic being. As I'm being carried out of heaven, million doorways appear in front of me. And in the center of all of these doorways is a huge beam of white light coming out of the greater darkness. I can see it. I'm outside of heaven, but I can see this big, huge beam of light that's illuminating all of these doors in a decreasing fashion of illumination to the outer edge, where it's still kind of dusky, but not completely dark, but not really bright. But in the center was very, very bright. And the voice, this angelic voice from heaven, said to me, "Choose light, choose a life." And in an instant, I had to choose. It wanted me to choose just the light itself, but I maybe I became, I don't know, further from heaven I got, the more mud I became. I chose light, but I also threw in a bunch of other stuff. In the instant of my choice, a door appeared in front of me and it opened, and I got carried down this tunnel. And as I got carried down this particular tunnel, I had this understanding that all the other tunnels were right next to it. And that there in my tunnel, there were all these doorways, windows, trapdoors, and portals, and they all led to all these other tunnels. And I had this distinct sense that they all interconnected and that these were all the choices I could make in my life that would lead me into these aspects of these other lives. I was shot down to the end of this tunnel, and when I got there, it pierced me open, and it stuffed me inside, and then as I watched, the eye of my heart closed. I felt like I was trapped in a sarcophagus, buried alive in the casket, and I couldn't get out of this thing, and now I'm stuck inside this thing, and my brain starts to come back online, and with my brain coming back online, pain is the first thing. The physical pain of being, not to be mortal again, not to be all healed and whole, which is what I had experienced on the other side. And as my brain came back online, the pain got worse, not just the mortal pain, but the physical pain because everything was on fire because it's cold and cold feels like fire. My body's being shaken, and I open my eyes, and there's my climbing partner, Tim, and he's got me by the scruff of my neck. He's shaking me, and he's crying and he's screaming. He's totally Mr. Super level-headed. We were both very level-headed. When you're in a dangerous situation, was one of the reasons we were together is because we both were that way. And so he's in a gushing of tears and screaming, "Don't die, don't die, don't die." And he's shaking and shaking. I was the first aid guy. He didn't know what to do. I look up at him and he's like, "Oh my God, you're alive. I thought you were dead." And he's screaming and he's yelling. And I'm have no idea who he is. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know where I am. I don't understand anything. He pulls me up and gets me to stand up and he's talking to me. And I'm like, wow, who are you? What am I doing? What just happened to me? Where am I? I'm still there and I'm here. I was living it instantaneously. I'm in two places at once. I'm inside of my body and I'm also above my body, kind of watching this whole scene. And that part of me, that witness part of me, I still have that. I'm much more integrated now over these decades of experience, but I live looking through this thing like I know that I am not it. I came back to my senses. I came back to my understanding, and he got me to pull the rope. And this time, when I'd fallen asleep a bunch of times, and I think I just collapsed, but this time I must have kind of fallen off the cliff further because the rope came free. And I pulled the rope and we descended, and the Icefields Parkway was 70 yards away, and the parking lot was across the street. In the middle of the wilderness, but there's still a parkway in the middle of this wilderness. And so we grabbed the tent and we self-treated for hypothermia. I became an entirely different person. My whole future changed, my family, my attitudes, everything about me became different, but I looked the same and I talked the same and I still had the same body. And so it was difficult adjustments for me, but it was also difficult adjustment for other people. Everybody who dies and comes back a different person. Early on, you said you don't want an NDE, and I don't recommend it because as much as people think, oh, you understand where you're from and eternal love and all of that is the best part of it because I understand my eternal nature. I know where I'm from. I know where I'm going. I'm not afraid of dying. I died again. Second time I died was a good day in my life. I was like, I'm going home. I'm going home today. And then I chose to stay. But NDEs are very disruptive. They're a radical paradigm shift for which none of us are prepared. And here's how disruptive it is. Estimated that 72 or 78 or 72% of near-death experiencers who are in a marriage after their experience get divorced. Well, I couldn't ever really hide it. It leaked out all over my life like I was a child with a cup of milk. I was spilling this milk everywhere I went. I didn't talk about it because I went into church ministry. I became a Protestant minister in a liberal denomination, kind of hiding out in the church. The way that I ran my ministry was for the people who were wounded, church members or not, domestic violence, homeless, hungry, poor, using wealthy people's money to put band-aids on people's lives. But I kept my mouth shut about it until this one church I was serving, I got called to. There was a major embezzlement made statewide news. It was two embezzlements. There was the preceding embezzlement that happened under the previous minister. And then there was the embezzlement that I walked into, and the previous embezzlers were protecting the new embezzler. A lot of different people. There's a ton of wealth, and that wealth had power, and that power asserted itself over a 9-year period. There was a constant embezzlement. The closer we got to the truth, the more these people went after me in particular. They were people who knew how to run the system, and they tried to dismantle me financially, professionally, and personally, and socially to stop me from digging. Eventually, we rooted out the embezzle. We didn't know what was going on, but in the end, they had turned the whole church against me, trying to get me defrocked. Once the embezzler was caught and the truth came out, the poison that they had spread through our entire town, because they served in all the nonprofit. Once this happened, they lost all of their power. They had to leave the church. They had to leave all their boards. They got completely depowered. So after this was all over, I walk in the sanctuary one Sunday morning and all of the deacons are meeting, and it's in the bylaws that they cannot meet without the minister. I have open wounds on me from where I'd been treated for 7 years. And so I walk in and they're the deacons meeting. I'm like, what the? And I walk by them, I kind of look at them, and I go up right before church. I walk up to the pulpit and I hear someone walking up behind me. And I turn around and she says to me, we're so sorry how we treated you. We can't believe that you put up with so much from us for so long. I realized that I could trust them with the truth. And she said to me, you must have had a lot of faith to put up with what we put you through, because it was public. It wasn't just in my town. It was county-wide and eventually became statewide in the news. She said, I must have had a lot of faith and that they understood what I was doing all these years, that I had to tell them the truth. And so I climbed in the pulpit and I threw away my sermon and I say, I'm not going to preach this morning. I'm going to tell you how I did what I did. And I'm going to begin by saying that I'm not a person of faith. I don't have any faith. I am not a believer. I have not been a believer since 1980 when I died. And that's how I was able to do what I did for you out of love. And this is what happened to me. I told them this story because I wanted them to understand that I didn't work for them. I work for the divine, and my courage and my strength wasn't mine. It wasn't me that was doing this. I was just getting out of the way and allowing this to be inside of me. And so I told them my story to a pin drop silence congregation. And within hours, it spread around town. I got phone calls that week from 6 other people who also were near-death experiencers, who kept their mouths shut. I knew them all. And none of them wanted to come back. They were all dragged back, and nobody had ever talked about it. I came out initially because I felt I couldn't keep it a secret anymore. 20 years was long enough, and I felt that I trusted my congregation for what we had gone through. I trusted all the people in my town because they'd seen me go through this, but also they'd seen me, help people put roofs on table, save domestic violence, yet all sorts of things that ministers don't normally do. I felt like I was safe, and I still feel safe in my town. I'm not the minister anymore. I went through a career shift, but I still live here. People here know me as a person before they knew me as an NDE, and that really makes a huge difference in my relationship with them, because they love me for who I actually am, not for my crazy near-death experience story, which I know that people kid me about. I know that some people love me, but they still think I'm a little crazy. Well, I would add in Kundalini awakenings and all sorts of different spiritually transformative experiences, because they all can have the similar result. I kept my mouth shut because nobody was going to understand me if I talked about it, and they're just going to think I was crazy. So why bother? That was a big motivator to keep my mouth shut about it. But it was super isolating. I tried to fit in. I tried to behave, which sometimes I did and sometimes I didn't. Everybody knew there was something going on, but nobody knew the reason why. None of my family asked. I kept my mouth shut, and I think you should keep your mouth shut. But that doesn't mean that you have to be isolated anymore. In 1980, there was no internet, and there was no information on near-death experience. And the only place I knew to look for people like me was in the history books, mystical history books in Western Christianity, Eastern Christianity, and global mysticism, which is what I did. And so I found my peer group is among dead people. But these days, with the internet, you don't have to be alone anymore. It takes a decade at least from a major mystical experience to reintegrate. It took me extra long because I did this by myself. You don't have to do that anymore. There's the International Association for Near-Death Studies for near-death experiencers and spiritually transformative people. That's a major organization and a gathering place for people like us. Depending upon your experience, the gift you were given in the mystical experience is lodged inside your soul and is an avenue back to what you experienced. Every mystical experience leaves noetic knowledge, understanding beyond the reach of reason, but not beyond the reach of experience. And by bringing your mind to that place again and again, meditatively, you reopen the door. Meditation really matters. Study helps. Study makes a difference. But ultimately, the only thing that really matters is the heart knowledge. And the heart knowledge comes in blasts. You have these divine experiences, but it can be cultivated through an interior meditative life. What I've found, and take it or leave it, is single-minded meditation that produces non-attachment to the egoic self naturally creates a capacity for the indwelling of the divine space, of the divine being that's expansive, connective, and integrative. And so I try to integrate myself in the exterior world, like moving pieces of the world around to make it work. I found that didn't work for me. I found that what worked for me was what the great oneness teachers, Buddha, Jesus, Rumi, Meister Eckhart, all talk about the oneness of being. And by aiming myself at the oneness of being, that's where I found my integration. I didn't try to figure out my psychology or my emotions, okay? But not spiritually speaking. I dove inside myself and stepped aside of myself with all of these individual breaths, which creates this accumulation of space and is where I actually found my integration. It's not an instantaneous thing. I empathize with all people who have had similar experiences who feel so disrupted, such a paradigm shift, such an alien nature. I felt like I was a freaking alien and I could see things no one else could see, which was crazy making. The only place where I knew that I was myself every time I went there was in the silence of my heart. And when I was in the silence, the solitude of myself with my breath, when I trained my brain to be in this space, in that space is where I began to find my wholeness every single day. And these little tiny bits I began to integrate day by day. And now we've got the internet and Zoom, and you can find people like yourself. But know this, just because a person comes back with an immense amount of prana or shakti or divine energy doesn't mean that they're integrated. It means that they came back with I know this because this happened to me, that I came back with all this extra energy. But what I was really glad I learned was that the non-attachment to my egoic self brought me back to my presence in heaven. And that one difference reoriented my life from trying to manifest what I wanted in the world with this prana magical energy and redirected it toward my higher self, toward my eternal nature, toward the oneness of being. And then as a result of that, I live in a bubble of heaven. I live a magical life. Things just happen to me all the time. I work really hard. I plan things out, but all sorts of doors just open in front of me. The doors closed too, that I shouldn't go through. Be as innocent, as wise as serpents, and as innocent as doves. Make sure that you're using your reason and analysis. Don't abandon your brain when you're going through this, because you'll need all your wits about you as you go through the process. And I'm sorry, one last thing is I'll be integrating till the day I die. It never stops. Well, the morning after, the second morning I was alive again, there was a roaring inside of me telling me to communicate, but not giving me any language. I knew that my task was to tell this story from the moment it happened, but I also waited a long time before I was ready to tell the story rather than rushing to it. What happened was I came out to the church, then I got recruited by this television program. We had this 2-minute spot every morning just before the weather to tell an inspirational story. That's what I was, an inspirational storyteller. And people in New York got wind of me and they invited me down and I ended up in New York. There was this smorgasbord of religious communicators. I was working with them. And then one night we all went down to the East Village and to dinner. And maybe there was 15 or 20 of us at this table. And I'm not a drinker, but I started drinking and I mentioned this thing. Oh yeah, that's happened when I died or something like that. And the table went silent and they forced me to tell the story. So I told this story. And then this producer who ran this network said, I'll tell you what, Peter, if you write this story, we'll produce the book trailer for you next month. If you go on YouTube, I have a book trailer. It's got 1 million views. That's the book trailer they produced like 2 years before the book came out. So they're like, and this would cost you this amount of money and we're going to give it to you for free, but we're doing this because we want you to write the book. So I went to my literary agent and I told her this story because I had another book before this. When the book came out, I was in the hospital from a heart attack. I had just died the day before of a widowmaker heart attack. And the book came out within 9 weeks. I had to be on one of those national morning shows. And I was suddenly gone from exploring it in my little tiny TV show, kind of pushing around the edges, to being completely out there in a much larger sense. When I tell this story, I go back there in my soul. It's a practice of recollection for me. I have access to the divine energy for my own good, and it powers me. And so writing the book was a way to empower other people who are near death experiencers to find their own voice and to be willing to step out into the arena. I wanted to be one of the leaders stepping out into the public, as I was already in the public arena, saying, look, if I can step out here, you can come and join me. You can step out too. And the more people who tell their near death experience, YouTube, books, movies, articles, the more it comes into the public consciousness, the more it's discussed in the public square, the less strange it is, the more opportunity we have to nudge the world in a new direction. If a million of us in the United States begin to speak about it, we'll have a cultural influence right here, right now. And if 10 million of us around the world do, then we're going to begin to open the conversation about love and eternal nature and why we should treat each other as human beings and not as enemies. We have an opportunity now to be cultural influencers for whatever comes next. And that's really what I'm after. I want to bring other voices to the public square so that as a group, we can, as individuals in a group, because I am not a member of, like my NDE is different than your NDE. We're in the light and love together, but we're all individually powered, which makes the whole thing much more powerful. I'm hoping that as we come out of the closet, all the people who've had Kundalini awakenings feel freer to come out of the closet. People who have had visitations from the dead feel free to talk about it. And the more that we talk about this, the more normalized it becomes, the easier it will be for us to see beyond our cultural, social, and financial barriers, national barriers, because people who see the light inside themselves see the light inside of others, no matter the color of their skin, their religion, or their atheism. Sure, not Church Sunday. It's what it's developing into is I've been doing comparative religious studies. I went to divinity school. I studied mysticism. I've been doing rigorous scholarly work from the pulpit for my whole career. And what this not church is, it's not church. And I called it not church because this guy named Pseudo Dionysius in the 6th century talked about negative theology, which is that anything you say about God can't be God because it's so far beyond language, you're wrong. So I called it not church. And the reason why I'm doing that is because mysticism has no bounds. It's expressed in the Upanishads and the Vedas and the New Testament, but it's all contextualized in the language and the culture and the person of who's ever doing the speaking or the writing. And so it comes through the filter of the body. Like all near-death experiences people have these things that happen when they don't have a brain. Their soul comes back in their body, their brain interprets their experience, and then they talk about it. And it's through whatever cultural context. What I'm trying to do on Not Church is to prove that there's this universal through line through Sufism, Christianity, Judaism, the Zohar, and I cite materials. And the other thing I'm trying to do, which is a major component of Not Church, is bring forward the practices of single-minded non-attachment. People talk in yoga classes, and I went to a lot of yoga classes. They talk about raising your prana. You had your prana raised in your Kundalini awakening. The energy can be cultivated, brought forth, lived inside oneself, and shared as a collective. What we're doing in Not Church is basically shared Shaktipat. Each of us has our connection. And as a collective, there's more energy there because as Jesus said, where two or more are gathered, the I am is there. The Christ consciousness is there. I began this whole thing as a secret experiment to see if that would work. I didn't tell anybody, but it turns out that's what happens. And so Not Church on Sunday morning is both knowledge for your head and energy for your heart. It's open to everybody. We have people who have no education, people who have lots of education. I try to present it in a way that's understandable because everybody who has a mystical experience, Kundalini awakening, there's noetic knowledge that comes back with that. And if you're humble, compassionate, kind, authentic, and speak from your experience, the wisdom just comes out of people's mouths. And the wisdom that comes out of these people, this despair, this person and that person, it's profound, whether they've got a PhD or they're ringing up Coke cans all day long. It doesn't matter. The person behind the counter actually has so much interaction with the public influencing them where they are. So, so that's and I teach Kriya yoga and I teach meditation and I do counseling, all those things. Peter Panagore .love. All my connections are there. I'm on YouTube, peterpanagore.love. Everywhere. It's a global bestseller. It's in every country. It's all over the world. Barnes and Noble in the United States, Amazon, a bunch of other places. I'm a big Audible fan. It's on Audible as well. It's going to be made into a movie. And I've been working on that for 4 years. This is also a way to get into the public square. The mass market, I'm aiming at the mass market on purpose because I want as many people to be talking about their near-death experience, to feel free to tell the people that they love and their friends about it that they haven't felt safe about, so that we can propel this faster. You got no worries. The moment that you die, it all comes clear. You can spend your life in deep mystical pursuit and contemplation or not. As long as you love the people around you, love is the treasure of life. It's literally the treasure of heaven. The more you love here, the more love you carry with you when you go, and the easier it is to experience the love on the other side. But if you want to bring heaven here now, the only way out is in. It takes practice and it's an incremental path. Mystical experiences, whether they're near death experiences, Kundalini awakenings, after death visitations, a shared death experience, or psychedelics, they're all a blast. And then comes integration. And the integration comes through the interior journey. It's not me saying that, but it's because all through history, that's what the mystics say. And I took their advice, and that's my advice to you. If you want to integrate, go inside.